And Mr. Starr is not here, but he talked about, I think, some costs. Let me just give you some costs. In this is the laborers' health insurance plan. Employers whose employees are organized by the laborers can participate in the plan. They have a deductible of $1,250 per person, $3,750 per family. There are a few $250 hospital. There are a few other odds and ends deductibles. There is no limit on the overall annual plan payments, and the per person per month cost of this plan is $1,350. Now, this is the SVC. It's the new 4-page thing that all of our health plans have to put out. I don't think that any of you can go on the private market and buy insurance this cheap. I know we can't. So, again, but the city can do what these plans do. In these plans, all the funds are held for the exclusive benefit of the participants. Same thing I'm saying here. The money is held exclusively for future health costs. If the city is serious about saving money, that's what you do. Managed competition. Be quick, there are a couple takeaways. First, you're not given a managed policy. You're not given a policy. You don't know what this means. Nobody knows what this means. Secondly, you're not being asked to approve a managed competition policy. You're being asked to require that there be a policy in every contract. I think the supposition that you might have gotten from the work session is that you would be involved in establishing what this actually means. It's just as reasonable to say no. You're being asked to require that it be in the contracts, and after that, you're cut out. You're not at the table when this thing gets in the contracts. And the one of the problems we're having is the APDEA subcontract. Their contract specifically allows the subcontracting of the parking meters. The IBEW has subcontracting. It's unpopular because I think it requires the use of union contractors. However, the AMEA, and I brought their contract, we have a subcontracting, a contracting out, we call it. It goes on for pages. It does not require the use of union contractors. It specifically allows the subcontracting of city work, and it specifically allows the contracting work that's being performed now by city employees. This is a fully formed policy. It was not brought to you. It's not being mentioned in any of the discussions. And we simply invite you to consider why, if they have this all worked out, they haven't mentioned this as part of this discussion. Well, one of the things that this policy has is any contract over $30,000 goes to the assembly. Are they not wanting to do that? It's hard to say. But a couple of quick things. The studies, contracting out, if that's what managed competition is, it adds as much as 20% to the cost. Now, Seattle was listed. We went and we have one of the reports issued for Seattle. And this is the cover page of the report, and I have the full thing if anybody wants to see it. But when you go into contracting out, here's some things that Seattle decided they needed to be aware of and that they might want to do. Pre-qualifying bidders, providing third-party review and or technical assistance, writing comprehensive contract specifications with performance measures, monitoring service quality, controlling cost increases. Guys, it isn't all that easy to save money by contracting out, especially if you have a workforce that knows what they're doing, knows where the bodies are buried, and knows which valves to twist when they're on these projects. And that's why local governments are backing out of contracting out. This stuff peaked in 1997, and here in the materials are some of the reasons why. I also have the article which we got this, the 2011 article, went through this. My favorite, of course, you've heard the good experiences There, of course, is New Orleans. All those busted levees were built with public contracts. The corruption in New York is legendary. And of course, in my hometown, Austin, Texas, where I went to school, everybody knew that the major construction contracts at the University of Texas were routinely routed to major political supporters of the guys that won the last election. And if you go down and look at the University of Texas, it's hard to find a piece of ground that hasn't got some pavement on it. But anyway, there are good stories and bad stories. Past practice. You were told that past practice is an ill-defined term and it's difficult to work with. That is not correct. Past practice, when you take it out of a contract, it's very problematic. Try to negotiate a contract that doesn't get overly long, but if you don't have past practice, it's going to be tough, because what it means is anything that's not mentioned in the contract gets to be imposed on you by management. Now, what is past practice? It's a course of conduct, clear, unequivocal, consistent, and mutually accepted over a reasonable period of time. Sometimes these cases go to arbitration. That's where you go when you have an argument. But the definition that the arbitrator is supposed to apply has been developed over years. It's not, there's no confusion about what it is. Past practice cannot be used to overrule unambiguous contract language. That is far and away the majority rule. It fills in the gaps. Now, give you an extreme example that came up in one of my bargaining units recently, the firefighters. We had some guys on deployment overseas. Before deployment, under our collective bargaining agreement with the firefighters, they get a certain amount of military leave. Now, it doesn't cover a year's deployment by any stretch. However, what it allowed these guys to do was sit down with payroll and adjust their leave usage so that they qualified, so that their families at home qualified for municipal benefits while they were gone. Now, during their deployment, without any notice to them, they began to realize, and they were later able to confirm, that the city had unilaterally repudiated the entire arranged leave deal. They had taken it and said no. And what they had done is they said, we're going to require that military leave be used sequentially from the moment you leave. It's our cascade concept. This is not prevented by USERRA. And so these guys had to scramble while they're on deployment overseas for our country to make sure their benefits and their families are taken care of before they get back. Now, to the city's credit, that we've worked successfully with the city to fix this. We're talking about a settlement now of the grievance. I couldn't be more complimentary with respect to the people from the city who are working on this and expressed genuine concern about what happened to these men. But guys, here's the takeaway. Our whole case was past practice. You can't do this from time out of memory and then tell us that suddenly you're going to change this. This hurts people. It hurts people in the worst possible ways because nobody sees it coming. Nobody expects it. You have no way to protect yourselves. Now, this is an extreme example. The city's being good about this, but it flat happened, and it can happen again. And past practice is one of those things that protects everybody. And here's the thing. Past practice is neutral. If it's a past practice, it's a past practice. Neither side can change it. And remember, I'd have to disagree with your counsel. When you have an unambiguous contract provision, past practice doesn't change it. That's the case where you find out they've been doing it wrong for years and they decide to do it right, and you sit down with the union and say, well, that's what the contract says. They're going to do it right, and that's just how it's going to be. So I don't see this as a problem. Most of the people on our side of the table, actually, I don't see it as the problem that the city sees it. I see eliminating past practice from contracts as a huge problem. Final thing is safety. What this does is that in management rights, it essentially takes employees out of the conversation of employee safety. I can't tell you how opposed we are to that and how dangerous we think that is. It suggests that at some point the safety decisions will be made in the accounting offices as opposed to on the streets of Anchorage where where the rubber meets the road on safety issues. One of the big ones we see now, what you'll see is methods means and personnel, which operation, and then you got personnel and you've got the words equipment. And if you think about that for a minute, one of the things that we're thinking again in the fire department, currently trucks typically have four-man crews. At the scene, you have a guy to run the pumps, you have two guys to be first in, and you have one guy to stand communications outside. All right? So you can run 3 trucks with 12 guys. Now, years ago, and for many years, we had 3-man companies, and the union for years said this is crazy. We brought in NFPA studies. This is insanely dangerous. You're going to kill somebody. Give us 4-man crews. And it finally happened at negotiations. But now what we're hearing is, and what you're going to be hearing is, well, we can have 3 trucks with 4 guys, but hey, we can have 4 trucks with 3 guys. And all I ask you to think about is when the fire's in your neighborhood, maybe even at your house, which of the guys on that crew are you okay leaving off the truck? The takeaways from me generally, and I'll try to be brief, is this. This legislation is a Trojan horse. To the extent that we think we know what's in it, these are disasters. And I would invite the Assembly, please do not open the gates of the city and let this in.
I want to start off by echoing what Chuck and Mike have said. This ordinance is a mess. It has confusing terms, conflicting terms, and undefined terms throughout the ordinance. And we're going to touch on a few. We've touched on a few already, but we're just looking at a few examples, I think. The first one I'm going to start off with is pay enhancements. And I believe there was a little confusion around this last week on exactly what this means and what it applies to. The Section 020H says that employee pay rates shall be based only upon bona fide position requirements and enhanced qualifications, which directly affect performance and classification, and all extra regular pay based on performance, longevity, by whatever name, including incentive pay, performance step programs, and pay increases based on longevity or service recognition, shall be eliminated. That seems pretty clear that it's being eliminated. What is not clear is what these baseline terms mean. Pay enhancements and regular extra pay are not terms that are clearly defined in labor law. They're not terms that we understand what they apply to. They would seem to be very broad, which raises the question of what do they mean and what exactly do they extend to? Yeah. Last week, the administration said that there will be no impact on step increases, that service recognition and longevity will be grandfathered, that service rec and longevity will continue to obtain increases, and this is all directly out of the slideshow from last week, that there's no elimination of annual step programs, and that advancement and performance improvement or step programs, the PIP and PSP, are capped. And maybe that's the intent. That's not what the words of the ordinance say. The ordinance says all extra regular pay based on performance or longevity shall be eliminated. So I guess the question is, what is the intent? Is it to grandfather cap? And if so, it doesn't say that. If it's not intended to eliminate step progressions, then it raises the question of what does that reference to step programs in there mean? It says step programs will be eliminated. Going on to hazard pay, I think there was some confusion about this as well. The statement was made that hazard pay would continue as a supplement. So in case of bomb squads or dive team pay, hazmat pay, that those would continue. It's not that clear to us that is accurate. I think the definition of pay enhancements would seem to apply to things like this. And really, these are small increases for dangerous work, unpopular shifts like night shifts, or additional licenses or education that encourages people to do certain jobs. And I'm just talking about the licenses, and it says that the ordinance eliminates any pay enhancement that's not based on a position requirement. In the abstract, that may make sense, but what it really is doing is when you have an additional education requirement or an additional license, and you say we're going to pay a little extra for someone to get a CPR license, CPR certification, or a boiler license, or some other additional education or license. What that's doing is providing flexibility to the city. It's allowing you to have additional people within that department or within that division that have those certifications. So when someone is on vacation or out sick, they can fill in for someone else. And that's being completely eliminated by this. It's something that will not be allowed. I mean, just going back to, see, head shaking, but just going back to exactly what it says, all regular pay based on performance or longevity shall be eliminated, and all pay rates shall be based only upon bona fide position requirements. So if it's something like a boiler license or a CPR certificate,